Welcome and thank you for joining the webinar today by eldoLED. My name is Cremer. I'm responsible for product marketing in eldoLED. And next to me,
Stefan, Wijdeven. Thank you for introducing me. I'm responsible for the technical sales in Europe. And today's webinar is all about the miniaturization of track lighting.
Absolutely. And behind the scenes, we should not forget, we have Heino de Heijde, another technical sales manager for the European regions. So he will make sure that this webinar will go smooth today. So today's webinar topic, you already mentioned it. So it's about improving your quality of light amidst track lighting miniaturization. And as eldoLED, a little bit of background. So we really focus on manufacturing, developing and manufacturing LED drivers for smart digital LED drivers. And we do that for some years, right, Stefan?
Yeah, well, approximately 15 years ago you started, basically.
yeah, well, say 10 years ago.
Well, you first started in your college room when your dad was founding the company, and 10 years ago it was officially a long time ago, but you're still with the company, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we really want to enable our customers, right, to deliver on the promise of LED lighting. By delivering on that quality of light, what you can do with LEDs.
That's what we do from the start, and that's what we still do today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we really believe that the driver, to deliver on that quality of light, the driver is a crucial element in that.
Yeah.
So last week we introduced and launched a new driver family, really focused on track lighting.
Indeed.
So, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So what are the benefits of these products? What offering do we have in that? And since COVID is limiting us, of course, all of traveling to all our customers, this is our way to engage and to have a little bit more personal engagement as well. So we're happy to have you here, and well, welcome again.
Yeah, we will bring you today to the story of the track lighting, the evolution we see, especially in that market segment where we are not quite active from historically perspective. We're active in downlights and regular lighting, but we've never been really active in track lighting.
So. Yeah, so you see eldoLED more often indeed in downlight, spots, linear, ambient type of lighting, and of course more the architectural entertainment applications with our DMX offering.
And how will the agenda look today?
So the agenda for today, first we'll take a look at what are typical LED lighting applications with track. Secondly, we'll look at what is the reality of LED drivers in track lighting today. So we call it the route to miniaturization, right? And next to that, we'll look at the new eldoLED offering in that 48-volt DC offering. And we for sure end up with the Q&A session. So you can add all your questions in the chat function of Teams, and we'll make sure we'll answer them at the end of the session. Yeah. So our talk will take approximately 30 minutes, and we'll open it up for questions after, and we'll take as much time as we need for that.
Indeed. So do not hesitate to submit all your questions. Even the most silly questions, which might look silly, can in the end be a very important question. So drop them. Our producer, Heino, will make sure that we have the questions on the screen available and that we will answer them live with, in most cases, I think, the correct answer. But it is live, so I hope we can answer them all.
Yeah, so I already mentioned it. So quality of light is at the core of what we do. So, and we repeat it every day. And if you think about what is the impact of an LED driver on the quality of light, we come with these different elements around this, in this image. So we can talk about dimming, we can talk about flicker, or we can talk about different form factors. And Stefan, you already mentioned it. So different form factors for different type of applications. So a downlight needs a different driver than a linear fixture. Yeah. And today we'll look into a new market segment. So we look into track, which needs a complete different driver again. So quality of light is what we're offering in there. And around that quality of light message, it's around, okay, how do you interact from that driver to the rest of the industry, to the rest of the system around the driver, where we can talk about controls interoperability. So we need to control, our drivers need to be controlled and connected. So two different control systems. If it's DALI, if it's 0 to 10, or if it's nLight. Intelligence and diagnostics is an important skill in that as well.
Yeah, so I see industry standards there, I see control interfaces there, and I see our own trademarks, and that all combined, in the end, defines the quality of light from an eldoLED perspective, right?
Yeah, so let's take a look at track lighting.
Track lighting. Well, I know track lighting from the luminaires you see on those power rails in several retail stores, but they used to be very big, and they used to have an enormous light output, but you're already seeing them for 30 years based on incandescent, based on xenon, halogen, but nowadays you see LED everywhere.
Yeah, so what are the two biggest benefits of using a track head in your space?
Well, normally the power and the electrical connection is on a fixed position in your building. And it can be multiple positions, but those positions are fixed from the day of installation. If you have a track system, you have a rail of power all around your environment, and you can freely position your luminaires on the place where you actually need them. So the biggest benefit is that you do not have to define up front where all the luminaires should be, but you can easily adapt according to the needs of that specific moment.
So let's take a look at some typical applications for track.
Yeah, so if you look on the screen here, we see a retail application. A typical retail application is changing at least every month because you have seasonal influences, you have different types of stores. Stores are moving from one brand to another, and you will always see that infrastructure, as you see on the ceiling, the rails of power where you can freely position those luminaires. And because those luminaires can often also be rotated, you can enlight special type of products in your store which you want to highlight, but you can also change the amount of light. If you need more light, you simply place more luminaires and point them to the same direction. That flexibility is what in the end got the track lighting so popular.
So is tunable white and something that's happening in retail as well?
Originally, you only had halogen and you only had incandescent. So you needed to define up front what the color temperature should be. Typical clothing stores where they had a high CRI request had a colder temperature than a typical grocery store where you want a more or less a cozier environment than in a typical high-end store. What we see today is that the applications are changing. Some parts of the building, I want to be a more cozy area. Some parts of the store, building, or whatever, I want to have a more professional appearance or a more clean appearance. So that's where you see that tunable white can be a benefit because it also offers you the flexibility of changing that perspective in the area. So you definitely see a movement to tunable white track head, but it's all based on the availability of components in the market.
So another, of course, typical application for track is art galleries.
Yeah.
So flexibility is
key there. Art galleries changing multiple times a year, and every painting comes with a particular requirement for lumens and also from a CCT or color temperature perspective. The painter is always painting his art in a type of light. And if you expose that same painting in an art gallery, you want to recreate that same scenery as the original painter had when he was painting the art at that moment. So that's the reason why you see multiple type of fixtures there. And because you move them around in the area, you need to be able to move those same light sources with the painting. And that's the reason why you see that track lighting in general is very popular in art galleries indeed.
Yeah, and of course the trend to miniaturization, because you don't want to see the sources where the light is coming from.
Indeed, you're entering that art gallery to see the art, not to observe the luminaires.
No.
We as geeks are looking to the luminaires in the art galleries, but normal art gallery attendees are entering for the art and not because of the lights that are used there.
Yeah. So then the next one is high-end residential or residential in general.
Residential in general has the same requirements. If you have especially high-end residential, but even normal residential houses have the same requirements. I want to enlight a picture on the wall.
Yeah.
I want
to move it in a year.
Indeed, but also flowers, for example, on the kitchen desk. A statue somewhere in the living room, which you might move over time.
Yeah.
But you still want to be able to illuminate that piece of art. But it can also be a table or a bookshelf or something that you wanna enlight. And in a typical household application, you only have a few light sources in the ceiling available. And that's the reason why you see that the track is also becoming more popular there, because it's offer flexibility. But you don't want that big luminaires in your residential environment, because they're simply too big and they generate too much light for the typical use case in residential. And that's where you see the miniaturization popping up. The same luminaires that are used in the art galleries to enlight paintings and so on are also getting smaller. And with the fact that they become smaller, they become more suitable for residential applications. And that's what you see here on the screen as well. You see the same type of luminaires entering the high-end residential area. And that's the reason why I think it's good for eldoLED that we take part in that segment.
In that offering.
In that offering, because that's the offering where we are strong from an historical perspective, because people care about the quality of light in those type of applications. And to offer that full product range suitable for the residential area, you need to be able to active in that segment.
Last but not least, so boardrooms or video conferencing rooms these days, right?
Well,
so
it becomes more popular every day. I mean, the longer you have to stay from the office, the more video conferencing becomes important. But also, if we look to our company with having headquarters in North America and a headquarter in Europe, you need to be able to communicate on a basically daily basis with each other. Normally we would go there a few times a year. That's impossible now. So now you have those boardroom to boardroom meetings where the high-end video conferencing is very important. So what do you want to see in those areas? You're looking to the screen, so you might be able to dim the lights there. You still need task lighting. The task lighting is mostly rotatable in such a way that you can provide the task lighting on the position where you want it. But more important, that light needs to be camera compatible, because you don't want all those flickering light sources interfering with your video streams in those rooms.
And we'll come back to that later, right? On camera compatibility and the impact of that. So let's take a look at those track spots, right? If you wish. So how did they look like previously, right? So and you can see some images here on the screen. The aesthetic design was not optimized, so that driver box next to the spot, and where the spot is a very high-end design spot, but have that bulky driver box visible in the space. From a manufacturing perspective, well, every driver from a different manufacturer has a different size or different dimensions, so they needed to develop and design separate driver boxes for different type of drivers. And one thing is, so from a design perspective, well, they wanted to make that driver box as small as possible, and it got smaller and smaller. And in the end, the driver basically didn't fit anymore.
Indeed. Historically, those spots tend to be very big because people wanted an enormous amount of light output with an halogen or incandescent bulb in there, or even xenon, and you always had those bulky inverters placed next to the light source.
Correct.
So those boxes tend to be big. With the changeover to LED lighting, those boxes were no longer necessarily so big as we've seen them 10 years ago. Those boxes becoming smaller. And at the moment, we are entering a moment in time where those boxes are no longer necessary. And they're even gone away simply because of the fact that people don't like the aesthetics of that box. And that's where miniaturization indeed starts for us as well, is the fact that the box is no longer there, so there is no longer a place to hide that electronic that we as eldoLED are producing.
Yeah, so for low volts track systems, 48 volt DC, the industry took basically a route to miniaturization there and bring it in track.
Yeah, if you look in a typical LED driver, the biggest part of the size of the product is the AC to DC conversion. So if you make a DC centralized track solution, you're positioning 80% of the size in front of the track, and you only need 20% of the size at the luminaire position.
Which is, yeah, great benefit.
Which is a great benefit, and that enables you to reduce that track box to be almost invisible, as we see that more and more today.
So let's take a look at the challenges that we see in that route to miniaturization in that space, right? In that let's call it low voltage track systems.
Yeah.
So what do we see today there? So one is, for example, dip switches.
Yeah, every LED requires its own amount of current. So if you want to make a product that's suitable for more than just one particular LED, you need to be able to configure the product. So you need to be able to select the right amount of drive current. You can either do that digitally via programming, like we do, but we see also multiple competition and customers requesting for dip switches because you can easily install them. But even for those dip switches, the size is no longer there to be able to have them on those LED drivers. So those will be reduced, and I think they're not necessary anymore today.
Yeah, so another challenge there is a soldering. So these boards, since these boards are so small, space is critical. So components that are not longer needed basically are taken off, like connectors.
Yeah, connectors are taken off, enclosures are taken off, simply because of the fact it's a waste.
It really ends up in a PCB, right?
Yeah, but it ends up in a component where you would see that it requires a different skill set also from the luminaire makers and the people that are actually assembling the luminaires in the factories. Originally, it was placing the LED, screwing on the LED on the heatsink, applying some thermal paste between the LED and the housing. But if you want to go smaller and you remove the connectors, that same people require all of a sudden soldering skills.
Different skills,
Which is a way different skill set. I mean, we're not talking about assembling, but we're almost talking about engineering. We need engineers to assemble luminaires.
Well, that's a complete different skills.
That's a complete different skill set indeed.
So next to that, dimming requirements.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, for us, it's obvious. We are eldoLED.
Yeah, we only offer the best in dimming.
We own the dimmable space. But where the industry at the moment is roughly around 1% dimming, we see that in miniaturization, because of the fact that it needs to be smaller and smaller, also the offering in deep dimming solutions are fairly limited because there is simply no space to do it correct. And therefore, yeah, the availability of proper dimming drivers all the way to dark is very limited in this miniaturization area.
Another one is single color offering, right? So, well, one color is great and dimming is even better, but what if I can change my color?
Well, we as eldoLED are recognized because of the fact that we offer tunable white driver solutions. We're recognized for that part, and if you want to offer that same performance, and if you want to offer the same possibilities from the big downlights all the way to that miniaturization in track lighting, you need to offer the same solutions. So we as eldoLED said, for us, single color is not enough. We need to aim for tunable white with the same operating windows as we have nowadays available in downlights and regular linear applications indeed. So we're offering there a tunable white solution, which we will zoom into later on this presentation.
Yeah, so another one is, of course, interoperability. So interoperability is key to be successful in the end on a system level.
Yeah.
Well,
DALI and the DALI trademark is key there.
But there is quite some challenge there, right? And we had that same challenge in developing this driver.
If you're developing something new, it always comes with challenges. So if you are entering a new market segment with a new type of products that require the certification as you are applying on other products as you used to, you need to see if the same type of rules are still applicable for the product that you're aiming for. So what you would see is that because it's no longer AC voltage, the test procedures need to be focusing on DC voltages instead of AC voltages.
Which is completely different.
Which is completely different. It requires a different setup. It requires different measurements. It requires different way of applying those standards on top of it. And one funny example, for example, is the fact that if the trademark that you need to stamp on the product has a minimum size, the product needs to be big enough to actually position that trademark on the product. So that were all kind of trade-offs that also those certification bodies has to do, simply to be able to meet the asks from the manufacturers in such a way that we can maintain those certification standards applicable for all those products to be equal.
And last in that line, so the dimming method, right? So we see quite often PWM still being used as a dimming option there, which has observed like flicker issues in the field. PWM
dimming is easier because PWM dimming requires smaller, doesn't require bigger components. So the components you need for PWM dimming tend to be smaller. So if you're aiming for miniaturization, the easiest way is to move away from constant current reduction and go again back in that PWM direction. That's definitely a segment that we didn't want to hit. We wanted to be able to bring the exact same appearance and same performance as we have on our AC products all the way into the DC products. And that brought us a lot of challenges during the development phase of this product because the size is standardized. We need to be able to use the available size in the most optimum way in such a way that we could develop a two-channel product indeed.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. So I already mentioned it. Last week, we launched a great new product family by eldoLED. And we would like to show you a short launch video for that. So that gives a short overview of what this offering is, right? So let's take a look at what are really the benefits of using this driver in this space. And let's start with the dimming, right? So the dimming of the driver.
Well, we're talking indeed about this DC to DC driver as we're offering it. And dimming is important in the high-end residential area, but also in art galleries and all those type of applications. But what we want to highlight again is the difference between dimming to 1% and dimming all the way down to dark, which seem to be only 0.9% difference. But the perception you get from that slight amount of additional dimming is enormous. If you look onto the screen, the difference between dimming from 1% all the way down to dark, you see a huge difference. Imagine the fact that you can only dim all the way down to 10%. As we see perceived, available in the market. That's perceived brightness, but we as lighting experts almost perceive it as undimmable because you can hardly see that a product is even dimming. So even the product, as we see it from eldoLED, from EcoDrive to SoloDrive, the dimming performance, that 0.9% is probably the most critical thing that we need to bring in that segment to be able to be successful there.
Yeah, because we really see where track lighting is focusing on, dimming is key. right? So think
what
about that
people,
boardroom, think about that art gallery.
This is indeed what people expect from eldoLED. This is what they see everywhere else. So we needed to be able to bring that same performance in this same product, which is 100%, almost 100% smaller as the products that you're used to from an eldoLED brand.
Yeah, so the dimming is enabled by the eldoLED technology, hybrid Heijde drive. What's another benefit of that technology is the flicker performance, right? Flicker safe dimming, I would call it. Compare it to a standard LED driver in the market.
The standard LED drivers in the market, which mostly are flicker safe today, as of today, because everybody is on those constant current reduction mode, as we see it all.
It's not like 10 years ago.
It's not like 10 years ago that flicker was truly an issue.
Yes.
But what you see is with the fact that you need to aim for miniaturization, people need to make concessions.
Yeah, they take out building blocks basically
they take out building blocks and they go for the smallest components instead of the best dimming components. And that's what you see, especially in the miniaturization trend, is that people tend to go back to those PWM dimming techniques, and those introduce flicker as we normally promote and present with our roulette wheels, as you can see here on the screen. Yeah. So the difference is a clear image or a image introducing bending or all type of color issues as you would see in tunable white applications there.
Yes, and again, right, if you're not aware of this issue or what our story is around flicker, I really would like to invite you to visit our YouTube channel, where there is a lot of information around the flicker and the dimming performance of that. So next to that, so interoperability to the controls industry. So as eldoLED, we provide that component, right? So we are the hardware provider in that space. But to be compatible in the end with these lighting control systems, we need to work with a controls protocol, which is DALI 2. So all these drivers are DALI 2 certified and showed up in the database of the DALI Alliance.
Yeah, all the products that we have launched in the last week regarding those DC to DC products do carry their DALI 2 trademark. And that DALI 2 trademark ensures us that we are according to that DALI standard, which is out there in the market. And a lot of control companies are doing exactly the same. They're also focusing on that standardization, which in the end ensures the compatibility between the control supplier and the luminaire that has been used, because of the electronics which is inside there has a DALI 2 trademark on the product.
Yeah, and so that DALI 2, that allows us to work with these lighting control systems, right? So if it's Sardonic, Helvar, or Crestron, as long as,
Well, what you see is that some of those companies are offering controls and drivers, but some of those companies are only offering controls.
Controls, yeah.
But we as a company are only offering the electronics, so the drivers. So to be able to be compatible there, the DALI trademark is basically the guarantee of success. And not all the control products are at the moment DALI 2 certified, but you have a higher chance with a DALI 2 product compatible with the control system than the original DALI product. So today, every electronics needs to be DALI 2 certified.
I fully agree with you. So the next one is tunable white, right? So the eldoLED offering has tunable white offerings in there, right? Yeah. So combined with the DALI 2 DT8 TC standard and the light chip technology that we deliver.
Yeah, our light chip technology is ensuring that the DALI color request we do over the DALI line in the end will be generated by the luminaire.
Yeah, because the DALI 2, basically the controller will only say, well, go to that color or to that intensity and that color.
Indeed, the driver handles that color mix. In the end, the luminaire needs to be equipped with a tunable white light source.
Of course, yes.
I mean, we can offer a two-channel driver solution. If the luminaire that we're using is still having only a one-color LED, it won't work. But what you see is with the large amount of available tunable white LEDs, the offering of tunable white is no longer an issue. And you can use the same enclosure, the same type of LED, but in that case a 2-channel LED, a tunable white LED, with the same sized electronics, and all of a sudden the single color luminaire all of a sudden becomes a tunable white luminaire, which can be controlled through different control protocols. We offer DALI, but we're offering DALI device type 6 and device type 8 in that segment.
So if I go back to one of these images of these applications, I can now build my installation with like track using tunable and DT8, the linear fixtures in my space, the downlights, the spots, all driven by eldoLED and all with the same consistency on color and intensity.
Especially if you see those larger projects which get specified, they specified on a room level. And all the luminaires that you're using in that room basically need to be according that spec.
Expected to work the same or to perform the same.
Indeed. So if you want to use the track lights and they specify tunable white light sources in the room, you need to be able to offer those tunable white light sources in the track lighting. And that's the reason that we, from an eldoLED perspective, are looking into the building and saying, for every type of lighting application, we need to have the same type of available products, from EcoDrive to dual drive.
So let's take a look at some benefits for the luminaire manufacturer as well in this product, right? Because programming these drivers, if you say, well, I'm going to add a dip switch on the board and I have like 4 or 5 different options, the eldoLED driver has, as we used to, that wide offering of current settings through programming the driver with the flux tool.
Yeah, this product can be set from 150 milliamps all the way to 1050 milliamps. And you can freely program the product in steps of 1 milliamp. Calculate the amount of dip switches you would need to be able to set the drive current in steps of 1 milliamp. Those dip switches simply wouldn't fit in the product. So we have offered that same configuration possibilities as we have on all our products already today, as well on those products. Basically equal.
Yeah. So and there are different options where or when you program these drivers, right?
Yeah.
Because we can program them we can pre-program them before shipment to the customer.
Yeah. What you see here on the screen is the fact that we pre-program those products from the factory in the correct drive current on customer request.
Yeah.
But the product can also be reconfigured using our flux tool application in combination with the toolbox. And in combination with the handheld programmer in this case.
Connecting on the LED code connections.
The product has on both sides of the PCB a programming interface, so you can program them from a board perspective, but you can already mount the product completely into the enclosure and then program them from the backside. Indeed, integrated in the.
So the flexibility, the amount of flexibility you want is basically up to you.
Yeah.
When I want to make that selection of current.
Yeah, and we simply went through the process. Is like if I'm the luminaire maker, what type of flexibility do I want to have in my product? And that's where we realized the fact that you need to be able to program the product once it's installed to the luminaire.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why we came on from the two-side programming solution indeed.
So we haven't talked about it yet, but the compatible track systems that our products are working with is the Stucky multi-system.
Yeah, the Stucky multi-system is the most widely used low voltage track solution in the market today, in North America, but also in Europe. The biggest available products are all based on the same enclosure, and what you also see is that the fact that all the available LED drivers for DC track applications are all targeting for the same Stucky multi-system system.
So there are different systems there, right, for Stucky multi-system.
Yeah.
So you have the multi-system Evo. They are almost the same. There are slight differences.
Yeah.
I think those are really important to explain to.
Yeah, the original multi-system solution was based with a track adapter where you had the magnets inside and you had a small metal strip integrated into the track. and
in the rail,
in the track rail, and the luminaire was snapping in the rail and hold in position based on the magnets. But that had some negative aspects. Simply, if you want to cut the rail into several pieces, you needed to have a different saw to be able to saw the tracks. Everybody was used to use those electrical saws, but all of a sudden there was a piece of steel, because the steel is capable of magnetizing. There was a piece of steel in that track. That was not so convenient, because you needed to have a different saw to be able to cut those tracks into segments. So Stucky changed that track in such a way that you no longer needed that sheet metal strip inside the track, and they removed the magnets from the housing. Because we realized, and also other manufacturers realized, that the magnets have an influence on the dimming performance, because the electronics tends to be disturbed by the magnetic force of the magnet itself. So Stucky changed from multi-system to multi-system evolution. They made an evolution in there. They removed the steel part in the track, and they removed the magnets from the track adapter. But from a performance point of view, they're equal. And the new mechanical version is also backwards compatible on the magnetic track solutions.
Okay.
As obvious, the other way around won't work, because if you place the magnet adapter into the non-magnetized rail, the luminaires simply fall off.
Makes sense. So another one is the mounting of the driver into the adapter. So it already came up, the soldering and making those connections. As eldoLED, we invented a mechanical solution which doesn't need any soldering, correct?
Indeed. We've added blades on top of the PCB board, so the printed circuit board where the product is designed around. Those blades are simply they simply fit directly into that Stucky adapter housing. So there's no reason to add wires. You can simply push in the product directly into the connection points of that track adapter.
Which is for the 48-volt power supply and the DALI lines.
Yeah, so both the DALI connections and the DC connections can both be snapped into the product. So the person that assembles the luminaire doesn't require the soldering skills to connect the product into the Stucky adapter.
And you still have the wiring, of course, from the board to the track head.
Indeed. So also the wiring that comes from the board from the board to the LED is based on push-in connections, and we're offering multiple ways of connecting those. The IDC connector, as we call it, which is installed on the product, can be pushed in a jig, can be pushed in manually, but requires no soldering skills. So can be handled by anyone who's assembling luminaires.
So let's take a look at the eldoLED offering. So the different driver options that we have. And you see it here on the visual as well, right? So you have the track, you have the adapter. So this is typically provided by Stucky. So then you have the eldoLED driver, which comes in different configurations as you're used to. So Eco Drive in 1% dimming, Solo Drive in dim to dark and dim to warm, and Dual Drive in DT6, Tunable White, and in DT8 for Tunable White. And at the bottom, of course, you see that track head, right? So that's what the luminaire manufacturer is responsible for, right? This is their product.
It's their product.
Yes.
Yeah. In the end, they make a combination of our product and their product to be a luminaire. But the important thing you highlight here is indeed we're only supplying the driver.
The PCB.
Yeah. The enclosure where the PCB is actually placed in is the Stucky product.
Yeah.
Which we are not selling, we're not providing. We're only providing electronics which are compatible with those Stucky holder in this case.
Yeah, so all these products are CE, ENEC, and UL certified.
Yeah, including the DALI 2 trademark and all other required certifications which are required to bring the product on the market. And we have the same offering from Eco all the way up to dual drive products. So every product you would expect from eldoLED is also available in a similar version from a DC track head solution perspective.
So question on that adapter from Stuki. So you see here one with in one spot. I believe there are also spot adapters by Stuki with multiple spot options. So like two, and maybe there are even more than two head units.
Yeah, the most common one you see is the single one, where you have only one track head connected to the adapter. We needed all the space we can use in the adapter to bring in all the electronics required for proper demo. So we had to do a concession in offering multiple solutions in multiple adapter versions, or limited us to the mostly used product. And that's what we did. We used all the space in the single track head version. So we are not supporting the dual head version. It might look the same from an appearance perspective, but the position where the cable is from the luminaire itself is entering in the track adapter is on a position where we placed components on the boards. So that's something that won't work. But the track adapter itself is 160, 170 millimeters long, somewhere roughly there. It's most of the times not a problem because you're not positioning those luminaires so close to each other that you definitely need two luminaires on one single track head. Yeah. Next to that, the single version is also available in multiple sizes, but we're only supporting the largest of the 3 or 4 available sizes out there, simply because of the fact we needed that space, and for us it was already a design challenge to get everything in there.
Okay, good to mention that. So what should you do next, right? So this product is available. So we have products on stock, and we can get your sample orders in today. So I would say reach out to your local sales contacts for eldoLED and get your samples ordered. So all products are, including documentation and design guides, are all visible on the website. So everything is available to help you.
Yeah, next to the fact that that local sales representative that we have in almost every country available is also be capable of providing the right supplier of the additional required components. So the Stuki adapter and the track adapter and the track itself is most of the time supplied by someone else. But our sales representatives truly know.
We have some overlap.
For each individual country, who the guy or girl to go to is to get those products as well, to be able to produce a luminaire indeed.
Okay, thank you. So very good. So we are at the end of the presentation part. So we would like to open it up for the Q&A session. Heino, are there any new questions that we can answer for this session? So a new question, or the first question is on the screen. So does the eldoLED solution support any 0 to 10 volt controls? Well, we only talked about DALI.
Well, the answer is yes and no. We're offering DALI products only.
Yes.
Because we think that the way of controlling these type of products is digital and no longer analog. But there is still a demand for 0 to 10 volt products. But if you would use 0 to 10 volts, you cannot individually dim the luminaires on the rail itself. And we as eldoLED are also offering translation boxes from 0 to 10 volt to DALI. So we have the DALI translator, as we call it, on our website. That product can be placed in front of the track in such a way that it translates the analog 0 to 10 volt signal into a digital signal that can be received by those DC-DC track LED drivers. So we're not offering them from a product perspective, but we do offer them, however, from an accessory perspective, which you only require one for the track, for the complete track solution.
Yeah, so we have that product, that translator is on the website.
Yeah.
I think we were working on some supporting documentation around this solution, so that people can
the same question
read it and know how to use it.
The same question came in from our salespeople, indeed. Why are we not offering a 0 to 10 volt solution? Because there is definitely market for that, and we're providing a documentation how to design in that translator box in such a way that you can use the products on 0 to 10 volt.
Yeah, so and there are of course many other control systems, right, that we also don't support. I think about DMX. Well, DMX is not the ideal combination with track, right?
No.
From an isolation perspective of the cabling.
Yeah,
So,
the track is not designed to be
and it's only two tracks that you have for the control.
And
for DMX
you need always 3 wires in it.
Yeah, okay. So I think the next question is already on the screen. Could I use this driver in track systems other than Stuki multisystem? Well, it's really specifically designed around the Stuki multisystem adapters. It's not designed for other type of track systems.
No, but what we do see is that also our competition is aiming for that Stuki product.
Yeah.
So what I expect is that all the other track solution providers are looking into the available driver solutions in the market and adjust their products to be capable of using the same product in their solutions as well. So it might not be there yet, but I think that all the other track suppliers are looking into that same standardized product that we as eldoLED offer, but also is offered by our competition from a form factor perspective.
Would make it much easier, right? And
it definitely would make it much easier. If that's not the case, we might consider going for other options as well.
Invest in other solutions as well.
Indeed.
Is there another question, Heino, that we can take on? 1 second. What type of 48-volt power supply should I use with these products? What type? Well, I know in the design guide we have some recommendations on power supplies that we've tested at least. Can I connect every 48-volt power supply as head unit?
If you want to create a stable light output, you definitely need a stable power supply. So I would always recommend to use a proper power supply. I would not go for the cheapest one. I would not go for the lowest one or the smallest one. I would go for a recognized brand there. And there are multiple brands out there in the market. And we have tested several of them to see if we are compatible with the power supply, also from an EMI perspective and from a certification perspective. Because in the end, you want to deliver a solution that complies from the AC voltage input all the way to the light source.
Yeah, and then of course you need to make sure you meet all the local codes.
Yeah.
If you think about UL class 2 or that it needs to be an explosion.
Every country has different regulations for power supplies, and with the fact that we are only looking into 48 volt as an input voltage, basically every 48 volt power supply should be suitable as long as it's capable of providing the right amount of power. So it needs to be capable of providing enough power for all the luminaires on the track rail.
Okay. Next question, only constant current output, right? Question mark.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, only constant current.
Yeah, there is definitely an ask for linear type of applications, but what we do see is that most of those linear type of applications on track is still based on constant current LED boards. So even the luminaire might look linear from a form factor perspective. Most of those LED boards which are placed inside are still based on constant current. And there is a small proportion of products that truly require a 48 volt or 24 volt linear input. But that requires you to translate the input voltage from 48 volt to the correct output voltage. So you need a kind of a DC-DC conversion. And you also need to be capable of dimming it. And we're focusing there on the constant current applications today because that's the majority of the market.
Yeah. Very good. So another question. We had some issues with the push-fit cable connections on the PCB board on an engineering sample. These came loose in transport. Will there be a design guide for these? Well, there is a design guide for these, right?
Yeah, the design guide is finished. With the launch of the product last week, we also launched the design guide, which is providing the cable guidelines, which is providing the tooling.
Yeah, because, sorry to interrupt you, Stefan, because the tooling can be very specific, right? So it definitely needs some guidance on how to use those connectors and the tooling.
This is an electronic component. It's no longer a product. We're talking about an electronic component.
Yeah, so you have to handle it that way.
Yeah, you have to handle it that way. So also from an ESD perspective, you need to be careful with those products. So what we realized when we were shipping those engineering samples to our highly appreciated early adopters, we also realized that without the proper tooling, people were not able to assemble and connect the wires in the correct way. So with that engineering phase and those pre-promotion of the engineering samples, as we did in the last year, we also were capable of providing that feedback from those early adapters, what we needed to change in the final product in such a way that those were workable from a luminaire maker perspective as well. So we're providing jigs to be able to mount the cabling. We're providing tooling to push in the connectors required for the LED outputs. And we realized indeed later on in the project that soldering the wires was not the easiest options. And therefore we founded that blade solution to be able to snap in the product indeed.
Okay. I really like that question. So I hope we convince you with this new solution. And if there's any documentation around these connectors missing for you, then please reach out. A next question on the screen already. So for the eldoLED regular drivers, the wiring from the input side consists of live and low voltage. Since a 48-volt track will be powered by a PSU consisting of one pair of cables going to the track, what happens to the one pair low voltage wire?
DALI is low voltage as well. The DALI voltage is roughly around 16 volts. So the DALI voltage level on the cable is the same type of SALV low voltage as the 48 volt supply. But the DALI standard allows you to combine that live wires 230 volt mains or mains wires to be combined with the low voltage wires in such a way that the DALI input itself should be able to withstand that main supply. That was one of the reasons why certification was challenging. So for the DC products, they made an exception there, not requiring those isolation from mains, but you need to treat the DALI cabling to be low voltage. So in some applications, if you combine them with high voltage applications, 230 volt mains applications, you need to be able, you need to place a DALI isolator somewhere in between the DALI line. But if the DALI line is only equipped with low voltage product, there's no need for such a DALI isolator.
Yeah, that might also be different per region, right? There might be local regulations that have impact here. Yeah. There's another question, Heino, that we can take on.
Yes, hold on for a second.
One more second, Heino.
Yeah, one more milli.
So he's typing in the questions live on the screen now.
Let's see.
This came in right on.
Oh, there he is.
Is the cost cheaper compared to the regular driver since this doesn't come with housing or connectors?
Well, I'm not that familiar with pricing, to be honest, because I only focus on the technical part. But what I do know from a technical component perspective is the smaller the components, the more expensive they get. So I'm not sure if with the fact that we reduce the size to half or more, that we'll also be able to supply the products at half the price. I don't think that the product in the end will be much cheaper. But the applications that we're aiming for are not the cheapest solutions. Those are the solutions where we aim to go for the quality. So from a quality perspective, they definitely are bringing the same experience as our AC product. But from a price perspective, I personally don't have a clue. Maybe you do?
Yeah, well, so they are definitely very competitive in the market, right? From a drive perspective in this market segment. So we're definitely, say, on par with competition in this segment.
If you compare competition in 48 volt solutions with us.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's something I can understand. But for example, if we compare an EcoDrive product with a DC product, it's not the fact that we reduced half the components because it's a DC product.
And it makes it lower cost. No, that's not the case.
Okay.
Next question. I cannot find the power supply recommendations on the website. Where are they? Well, those are live questions, I would say. So there is on the website, if you go to the product pages, and those are in the product category DC to DC, then on the different product pages, so like if you go to the Eco Drive or to the Solo Drive, there is a design guide that you can download. In the download section, there is a design guide. If you open up that PDF document, there are the power supply recommendations in there.
They're definitely in there indeed.
Absolutely.
So the place where you find the data sheets, 1 or 2 links below there is called the design guide. And that's definitely stating out the advised power supplies. But if you ask me today, a well-known mean well power supply would suit the job. The DIN wheel mounted power supplies, for example, from Pulse Dimension, will fit the job. Every country has their different type of certification and also their different type of power supplies. But we definitely listed a lot of them. We'll check after this meeting as well to see if they're actually there.
They are there, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure they should be able to be located on the website. And our technical guy even brought the information on
It's already on the screen.
On the screen indeed. So definitely we see there multiple brands, including part numbers, which you can use to power these DC products.
Thank you, Heino.
So the last question is DMX in the future. Is this going to happen?
DMX, is that going to happen in the future in this product line?
I don't think this market segment is going to be DMX controlled. So I think this market segment, which is indoor lighting, which is not dynamic, which is not entertainment type of lighting, is not entering the DMX controls.
No, it's not a market that we will focus on as eldoLED with DMX.
If we look in the sheet back, so we're linking with DALI in such a way to be compatible with controls. I think the linking pin also
and the control systems that are typically in these spaces, right?
Yeah, are DALI indeed, and the DC rail is designed to be a DALI type of rail. So I don't think that the market in general will move to DMX controlled solutions there. Neither are we.
Yeah, and coming back, right? So what we just mentioned as well, the rail itself, in the end, it has 4 tracks.
Yeah.
So it has 2 for 48 volts and 2 for the communication lines.
Yeah.
For DMX, you need 3 communication lines.
You need that shielding. The track solution itself is unshielded as well. So it's not the best thing to do to aim for DMX in the rail, which is never designed to be DMX controlled.
Yeah, and we had a good webinar last month on DMX and all the technical do's and don'ts. And one of them in there, which was explained, was the usage of 3 connections instead of 2.
Yeah.
So next question, is it still camera compatible? Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
That's one of our key requirements if we launch a product. It needs to be capable of dimming, and it needs to be camera compatible. It needs to have a wide operating voltage. It needs to be a wide operating current.
Yeah. That's what
from
eldoLED.
A design perspective. That's our first requirement that we put on the table if we start designing a product. And indeed, the camera compatibility, HD studio camera compatibility is definitely part of this product as well. This does definitely not mean that the product is flicker free with all those cell phone cameras you see on the market.
Absolutely not. So cell phone cameras, right? That's a complete different type of usage.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we still perform way better than most of the competition, also on those lower cost type of camera solutions. But the camera compatibility from eldoLED is aiming for broadcast cameras and conferencing cameras.
Well, I think we have a great example here. We're in this booth of eldoLED, which is fully lit with eldoLED drivers.
Including the luminaires as well, as you can see on top
exactly.
of the screen. So the luminaire we have over here is actually placed there in the ceiling as well. And they look pretty flicker free.
Yeah. Okay, so that was the last question that we've got for so far. Of course, you can always send us any question you have, even after this webinar. Well, I really want to thank you for joining today this live webinar. For us, it was very exciting.
Yeah.
We'll definitely come up with another session on another topic in the next months. I would like to thank you, Stefan, for all the information you shared. Heino, I also want to thank you for producing this session. And of course, we want to thank you for joining the session today. The session is recorded, and we'll make sure that the recording will be made available again on our YouTube channel. And for everyone who was registered to the event, it will be shared by email. So thank you again, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.